How's everybody doing? All right. Oh, good. My mic's on. I want to make sure it was turned on. It's great to be here. It's great to get a chance to talk with you and to hopefully bring up a topic I think is interesting. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my personal story and tie that into some of my own experiences. I like to talk about the difference between a venture-backed company and a bootstrap company and talk about what your own personal venture might be. So a little bit about our company first to start off. We've been around almost 16 years this summer. We're an experienced company. There are a few of us here. It's surprising. We have the hub of customer experience companies located in Utah. I'm sure you've heard of Qualtrics and, of course, Merit CX. We're in this space with them. We focus more on the services and solutions side than our Qualtrics friends who are more on the tool side. But we have about 350 employees now with offices in many different countries. Our main corporate office has around 200 employees, just up off 106th. And it's been a great pleasure to be able to grow here with Utah, as well as kind of expand. So we've had a lot of our employees who've had a chance to go overseas to different offices. We have a new office we just opened up in Australia and another one in New Zealand. It's like 2 blocks from the ocean. It's just beautiful. I was down there last week, and I was like, this is where I'd like. We have an employee that's actually moving there right now. I'm kind of jealous of him. But we work with a lot of really big brands. I like to show this slide just because we won. It's like, hey, there's Qualtrics, there's Merit's over here, and we won. But this is nice. Our space has been validated by Forrester. They just did this last year. It's the first time they've done what they call their Forrester Wave. It's a big validation of our space as it's becoming a bigger and bigger space. But there's a few billion-dollar companies on the list up there, which is kind of fun to be a part of this group and to be leading the pack. We collect data in a lot of places, and we collect a lot of data. Everybody heard of Yelp, I'm sure? Yelp has collected around 120 million customer reviews in their 17-year life. We collected about 150 million reviews last year alone, just to kind of put it in perspective. Now, we collect it on behalf of a lot of brands, from restaurants and retailers, hospitality, travel, energy, wow, just across the deck, a lot of B2B companies. We work with a lot of brands, over 500 brands now. This does not include all of them, but it gives it kind of a laundry list of ones we work with. So when we think about what we're collecting, we focus on the experience that you have as a customer and the experiences you have with that brand. And there's a lot of different touch points. So you hear people talk about customer journeys, those magic moments of truth. Our goal is to collect that experience, to understand the customer's experience. My mom was like asking me, what is it your company does again? And I always have to kind of explain it. And I tell her, I'm in the smile business, Mom. She's like, well, what do you mean? I said, our job is to try to listen to customers and help businesses give their customers great experiences. That's what we're in the business of, is great experiences. So some of the things we do, we try to listen differently. We have a product called Active Listening. I'm sure you guys have interacted with the chat bot before. Well, what we do is when a customer's leaving their experiences, we encourage them to share more information through an interactive chat bot, if you will. We also go through and alert businesses of various different things that are occurring. When something's out of the normal, we'll tell them about it and help them understand what's going on there. We give them all sorts of analysis, a lot of real-time analysis, stuff that used to take weeks or even months to go through and produce inside of information. We now collate this information on the fly as customers are sharing it. The traditional idea of doing a market research project is almost laughable in today's world. You have to be able to react that fast. So information that came in 2 weeks ago, you need to be able to make a business decision on it today. So we constantly are updating this. Our dashboards update in real time as information comes in, and we're able to help people and then democratize that information throughout the organization so everybody hears the same story that's coming from the customer. So it's kind of cool that way. So a little bit about my experience and kind of the heart of what I want to tell you here today. I first got out of school. I graduated. I went to BYU and then the University of Utah for my MBA. And when I first started, I went to a company called Sterling Wentworth. It's a bootstrap company, meaning anybody who can tell me what a bootstrap company is? Not a tough question. Self-funded, right? Do it yourself. You use your credit cards, your mom and dad, basement, garage, whatever it is. You start it yourself. Versus other companies I've been involved with. I was involved with a VC-funded company. where we went out and raised $20 million, and they gave us money and held us accountable to it. And then Inmoment, which I started up here in 2002 as a bootstrap company. And the interesting thing about that one is it came on the heels of the .com I was involved with. Bluestep was an online collaboration company, and we didn't quite make it. Now, they've sold the technology off. It's actually still being used by a Utah business today, but that was a 2.5-year nightmare for me. During the whole .com craze, everybody going crazy, people spending money that they didn't have, and I kind of see that again today. There's businesses up and down the Wasatch Front that are spending money they don't have. It's kind of, I hope it doesn't go the same way it did in 2002. That was brutal. But we had a chance. In our building, we took out 2 floors and we subleased part of it to another business here in Utah. And we had a chance to see a lot of businesses in Utah that wanted to rent some of our space. And we had to turn down a bunch of them because we're like, well, you aren't making money. Why would we rent to you? It's kind of interesting to be in that situation. So, VC or bootstrap. There's definitely different kinds of pressures involved, different types of cultures, and different types of ownership. That's the reality of these. But when you think about it, the control is probably the most important thing. Because if you've raised money from somebody else, well, you don't control it anymore. Obviously, there's some businesses that just can't start without being VC funded. They just can't be. At the same time, there's ideas that aren't proven yet that VCs won't give you money for. And you have to prove it anyways. So I'm heavily biased towards bootstrapping it. One, because I believe that you should own the business after you're done with it, not somebody else. Inmoment here, 16 years later, we're employee owned. We have some outside investors we brought in to help guide us and direct us here about 5 years ago. But they're minority owners in our business, and our employees are the ones that benefit from this. And that's a big deal to us, a real big deal. Anyone heard of a company called Vivint? Sold for, like, I don't know, it was $2.5 billion or something like that, kind of crazy. So we have 2 other executives working for us. And so I happen to know a little bit about that transaction in a different kind of way that I don't think everybody does, because it sounds like a great success story, right? You go through and raise a business, it goes off the charts, you sell it for $2.5 billion. How many people do you think made money, how many of the employees made money on the sale of that deal? 100? I mean, they had 3,000 employees at the time.
The owner.
The owner? Just the owner. Well, not quite. But there were 9 shareholders. 2 of them worked for me, and they didn't make that much on it. So it was very much concentrated in just a few people, and that's a little different from the way we believed. Over our years, our goal is to see employees be able to pay off their mortgage. We've had 20 employees pay off their mortgages with their shares they own in our company. And that's fun to be able to go through and look at it that way. So, the VC company, the parable of the business executive. I need someone who is a real go-getter and come up, and I'll give you something. I've got some t-shirts and stuff, but I need a volunteer from the audience. Someone come up and help me? Don't make me pick on the guy in the front row. That's just mean. Come on up. Thank you. Come on, give him a hand. Give him a hand. All right. All right, what's your name?
I'm James.
James. Thank you for coming up here. Appreciate it.
It's nice from over here. It's a good view.
It is. It's nice. It's comfortable up here. Okay, so here's what we're going to do.
Okay.
I need you to give 110% of your time.
Okay.
Your talents, your heart, okay? Everything that you care about. I need you to put in 18-hour days. Mm-hmm. For the next 2 years, you're going to make a lot of sacrifices. But if you do that, let me tell you what we've got. Up on the mountain up here is this beautiful mansion. Mm-hmm. It's got a big toy garage off the side.
Okay.
What kind of toys do you like?
All of them. I went dirt biking for a full week on spring break.
See, exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Dirt bikes, snowmobiles, other types of toys.
Sounds
It's
good.
all loaded up. It's on the golf course. You also have horses, too. The whole thing. It's all stabled out and everything.
Sounds good.
If you do all these things, someday all that will be mine. Thank you. Go ahead and take a seat. Okay. Wait, I got a shirt for you. Come up here. All right. So I've got, I don't know, it depends what you like. If you like we've got the Inmoment Spider-Man. We've got the regular labeled Inmoment one. And I think I even have another. Oh, I've got this one here. If you like those, whatever you work. But I think this one comes in extra sexy. It's kind of small.
Ooh, I'll take the, I don't think I can fit in that one.
All right, well, take that one.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for coming up. So, give him a hand. Yeah, pick on him a little bit there. It's kind of mean. You know, it's interesting. I've seen this story play out too many times from close friends that have built businesses. We recently bought a business here about 3 years ago. We spent tens of millions of dollars on this business. The founder had a friend of mine who I'd known for about 8 years before we bought him, and had a chance to get to know him. And he was a direct competitor, but we'd see each other at conferences. Always maintained a great demeanor between the two of us, and it ultimately ended up being we bought them. So he's a founder of a business, started it, made a lot of sacrifices, especially during those first couple of years. It's hard. It's real hard to get a business off the ground, making all sorts of challenges. He'd raised money the VC way. He'd raised money 4 times, okay? 3 to 4 times is typical of getting a business off the ground. So we spent $38 million on the business. How much money do you think the founder made after all that sacrifice and 12 years of hard work? Another success story? $150,000. So why does that happen? Because we're told in a lot of corners, I know you guys are getting better info on this now, to try to go through and prove your ideas before you go get money. But if you don't prove your idea well, it can turn out badly for you, kind of Rumpelstiltskin style, and lose your firstborn. So that's sometimes the thing. Sometimes it can be good for the founder, like Vivint. Hey, hats off to Todd. He made some dough. Okay, so the bootstrap company. You can tell a bootstrap company because the chairs don't match. In our case, the table in our break room was my mother-in-law's. We actually was our conference room table for like a number of years there. Things don't match. You grab stuff wherever you can. You live on the cheap. And it's interesting how many customers appreciate the fact that you're thrifty with your money. We had multiple clients of ours post pictures of our office space. At some point in time, it became a little embarrassing. But of our office space, talking about, hey, look how great these guys are with money, how careful they are. Yeah, well, I think we finally grew past that. But we were very good with our money and very careful. I'll come back to that story. So a little bit about entrepreneurs. We just really believe that first time we do something, we're going to make it. And so when we get approached by somebody to raise money, we just say, you know what, I know that this idea is awesome, and the first time I do it, I'm going to make that jump. The problem is, let's play that again. I think he's going to make it the second time here. Every time we go down that ramp, we believe we're going to make it. And then play that one more time. I'm pretty sure he makes it on the third time we got it. Yeah, he doesn't make it. The truth of the matter is, as entrepreneurs, it takes at least 3 failures to make it through. It does. It's hard work. It's a lot of sacrifice, but it's a pretty cool thing when you do. The danger when we go in to raise money, I almost liken it to car shopping. If you go out and look for a car and you just say you're looking, how come we all end up with a car like 2 weeks later? You're like, I was just looking. No, I got a car. and that's part of the problem. But when you show up to these VCs with your idea, the first time you ask for money, they're like this.
What is thy bidding, my master?
And you're like, dang, I'm like the coolest things in sliced bread. And they're like, they just totally love you. And they take you into their lavish places, and they heap all sorts of stuff on you. And they know you're going to miss 2 or 3 times. And you're going to have to come back to the table. And the next time you come back and ask for money, it's more like this.
The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
And you are like so screwed. Because they got you right over a barrel. And that story I had on the other page there about Great Clips. We brought in a few angel investors, early stage people that believed in us, and we thought we could trust to go through and invest in us and not have the same kind of requirements that a VC might have. And we got it was about $250,000, not a lot of money, right? Keep it nice and small and try to be careful with it. And we'd been running the business for about a year when we brought that in. And we thought we were within 6 months of kind of breaking out and having the things happen. And we had some metrics in there over the first 6 months. We said, okay, we got to hit these steps. And the first metric we didn't quite make. So we got the first payment from these angels, and they said, well, you didn't hit their metrics, so we're not going to give you the payment. And we're like, it's been 4 weeks. And we were close. And so we're like, are you kidding me? We missed the first metric, yes. But we didn't think we were going to be in a situation where they're going to put us over a barrel and suddenly not be able to go through and get the next payments. We had 3 more payments. And we're like, this is crazy. So we went through and I met with each employee. We had a deal that was on the table with Great Clips. And it was going to make or break the business. And they had been into our offices, sitting literally at my mother-in-law's table, and said, we want to sign with you. But there's a difference between we want to sign with you and we signed with you and now are paying you. So I asked each employee, and there were 10 of us, and said, what do you want to do? They said, we don't want to go through and go back to the table. Because the angels had said, oh, hey, if you triple the ownership that you've given us, we'll give you the next payment. Yeah, nice and over the barrel, right? So we said no. We walked away from them, and they were like stunned. We're like, yeah, we'll just go without. So we went without, and literally, Great Clips signed with us a few months later. We had employees who went for between 6 and 10 months without pay. Some of us went like a year and a half. But the bulk of the employees went between 6 and 10 months without a paycheck. And all those people were able to pay off their mortgage. Really kind of cool story. Okay, so when you take in money, here's some of the tough things. It doesn't necessarily matter how much percentage is owned. In this example, these angel investors, it was like less than 10%. But guess what they controlled? Our cash to pay the bills. So they had the control, and they can make kind of crazy recommendations to us like what Ron had happened to him.
When we asked Reebok to send us Terry Tate, some people thought we were crazy. But I'm a firm believer in paradigm breaking, outside the box thinking.
Hey, buddy.
Break was over 15 minutes ago, Mitch!
And since Terry's been with us, our productivity has gone up 46%. We're getting more from our employees than ever before.
You know you need a cover sheet on your TPS reports, Richard! That ain't new, baby!
Hey, Terry.
Hey, Janice!
But what's really impressed me is how Terry's become part of the Felcher family.
Yeah, baby!
He fits right in here.
That's a long-distance call, Doug!
To be honest, I wish Reebok sent us 10 Terry Tates.
You wanna play games, Gene? Well, when it's game time, it's pay time, baby! Woo!
So, Terry Tate, right? We had to hire an office linebacker. Our angel investors, as part of the deal when we signed with them, was to hire a person that they brought to us. I couldn't wait to fire that person. That was great. Okay, maybe in a nice way, but it just didn't work out. So, something I wanted to share with you. When we look around the world, there's different types of things that sometimes are really frustrating. And I tend to try to make up models to help me understand the world. This is something I don't know how I try to interpret the world. And one of these models I use, especially I think it's relevant as you're getting through school here, is a model I call kings, lords, and serfs. And this is a good video kind of outline.
When I grow up, I want to file all day.
I want to claw my way up to middle management, be replaced on a whim.
I want to have a brown nose. I want to be a yes man. Yes woman.
Yes, sir. Coming, sir.
Anything for a raise, sir.
When I grow up,
I want to be underappreciated.
be paid less for doing the same job. I want sunshine blown up my dress.
So, I love that kid. I want to claw my way up to middle management. This is like, yeah, that's what we all were like, hey, that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wanted to be a fireman, though. And each of us have our dreams of what we want to be when we grow up. And that sometimes is a frustrating thing. We look out in the world. This first group I call kings. These are people who, through a little effort of their own, are successful. And in other words, the laws of the land don't necessarily apply to them. We all have a friend like that. I have a couple of them. I just go, really? How in the world did you? fall into such great success. Hats off to you. I can't go through and compare them to anything else because they're kings or queens of industry and things are just kind of weird for them. You're like, that's awesome, well done, and the rest of us actually have to work for it. The next group I call serfs. This is kind of all of us, right? We're just people just working for the man and don't necessarily know the value that you're creating for the business. Therefore, you don't get the pay that you deserve. I think that's probably the most important thing you can take away from anything I say today. Know the value you create. You're not going to get paid otherwise. You're going to get paid market, right? I don't like being paid market myself. Okay, last group, lords. These are people who take a personal risk. They go through and have a sacrifice today for some kind of benefit tomorrow. The employees at Inmoment, many of the early ones went without pay for various different number of months or went with reduced salaries because they wanted to have something for the later. They became employee entrepreneurs, if that makes sense. And they were able to benefit from things, to be able to take advantage of the upside and the growth of the business that they were creating value in. I remember our receptionist at the front had shares in our business, and I'd go up and tell her about what was going on, and she'd say, "Did you use the coupon when you bought lunch yesterday for the employees?" And I'm like, "Sorry, no, I didn't." Because it was her money too, right? So going through and putting everybody in the same category. So the question is, can you change your stars? Can you go from being a serf to being a knight? And I thought this was an appropriate video.
My lords, my ladies.
At the match, it's 3 glances. 1 point is awarded for breaking a lance on a man between the waist and neck. 2 points for breaking on the helmet. It's difficult. And 3 points for bearing the rider to the ground.
And do men die in the joust?
Accidents happen.
You have to be of noble birth to compete.
Well, so we lie.
Does this not shock you, ladies?
Someday, I'll be a knight.
Yes, sweet. He believes another man can do anything.
For you are all equally blessed. For I have the pride, the privilege, nay, the pleasure of introducing to you a knight.
Ulrich.
Von Liechtenstein. That would happen in my heart.
But you can't even joust.
I think it's getting worse. He is getting worse.
If the nobles find out who you are, there'll be the devil to pay.
Pray that they don't. And I won't spend the rest of my life as nothing. We can be champions. I've waited my whole life for this moment.
He's won 4 tournaments in a row.
That man is unbeatable.
Yes!
We be sons of peasants. No matter what, a man can change his stars.
I will not run!
I'm here to compete.
So can you change your stars, as it were, right? I think that's the coolest part about being an entrepreneur. Now the question is, does everybody feel like going out there and not making money for 2 years and making sacrifices and assuming the business is going to be successful? No, not everybody, especially since only 1 out of 10 make it. It kind of gets a little scary. But you can go through and do something different. You can be an employee entrepreneur. And for those that want to go out and be an entrepreneur, I definitely want to encourage you to do it. But for everybody else, I want to encourage you to be an employee entrepreneur. And I'd like to kind of walk through some of these steps. So I think the most important thing you can do is, if you think of a business you're going to, evaluate it like it's a startup. Go through and sit there and figure out how you're going to be. It doesn't matter if the company is 1 day old or 15 or whatever number of years old it is. The company I went and worked for right out of school, Sterling Wentworth, was actually 15 years old. They were not a startup. They were making $2 million a year and were a software company. And I looked at them, I said, there's an opportunity that I can take advantage of and I can help with. I went in there, I moved up quickly, became charge of product. I built 4 or 5 major products. 3 years later, the business was making $20 million instead of $2 million, and we sold it off, and I had my first event. As an employee entrepreneur, I participated in the stock and had a 7-figure event right out of school. It was a great experience for me. So, some of the things I want you to do is to look at the fit. When you're evaluating a startup, you got to see if you fit in there first. Where is your value, and what are your core skills? And asking this question here, can I be a key employee at this business? Has everyone heard of key man insurance before? Anyone know what that is? Anyone ever heard of them? Key man insurance, what is it?
Use them like in hospitals as well, but like somebody that's super important to your business, like if something happened to them, your business would fail. So you can insure that person for their skill or whatever in case something happens to them.
That's right, that's right. Well, I'm going to give you a little example on how we can do that and talk about that role of being key. So the first one here, I got a little grid here I use to help explain things for me and how to put things together. This grid, I've got 3 main questions. First one is, what do I like doing? What am I good at? And what are people willing to pay me for this? This is my example for you helping find your first job and fit. If you can get 2 of these questions answered as yes, you found yourself a good job. We'll talk through some of them here. So, first one, let's say, for example, it's something you really like. It's like, oh, I really like that. But you don't happen to be very good at it, and no one's willing to pay you much money for it. What is that?
Hobby.
That's right. It is a hobby. All right, what about this next one? Let's say, for example, you don't really like it, but you happen to be good at it. I'm actually good at finance. I really don't like doing it all day long. It's not a thing I'd sign up and say, I want to do that all day long. But they're not going to pay a lot of money for it. They're going to pay you market, right? What kind of job is that? Well, this is a job and you are a serf. Welcome to the business world. You get paid market. You get paid going rate. So how do we go through and change some of that? Well, let's say, for example, you find a job you're good at and you've figured out the skills to be able to be paid well for it, right? What kind of job is this? Well, it's got 2 check marks. Guess what? This is a good job, and you're getting good pay. You're here in school to try to differentiate yourself so that you don't end up with a job as a serf. That's your goal here right now. You don't want to be a serf. You want to go through and say, I've done something. I've figured out how to be valuable. I know my worth. I know my fit. All right, what about this next one? Let's say, for example, you like it and you're good at it, but you won't get paid a lot of money for it. What is that? Say again?
It's a university job.
It's a university job. Yes. This is a job that makes a person content, but not necessarily rich. I have many friends have found great happiness in life because, again, they found 2 of the answers to these questions in their job. It's important. You got to get 2 of them. It's just really hard. So this next one here is kind of an interesting one. Let's say, for example, you don't really like it, you're not very good at it, and no one's willing to pay you a lot of money. What is that? Does it exist?
College student.
Oh, it's a government job. Those exist everywhere. Although in 2009, it turns out you can have a government job now. We passed over, and you can get paid more for it than a private sector job. So congratulations. Go get a job there. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Well, sort of, a little bit. But what if you can go through and get all 3, right? I mean, this is what we're striving to do. The tough thing is you're not always in a position to negotiate to find this. And that's where being an employee and entrepreneur gives you that opportunity. As an employee entrepreneur, you might find a job where you're being paid a little bit less, but you've got all these checks. And that's what I want you to try to figure out, okay? All right, next one. Where is your value? So I think each of you know by this point in time what you're good at. You figure that out. It may not be something you like. Is that fair to say? It's something you're good at, you don't like? Okay. Know what your core skill is, though. You've got to know what it is. It's your first bargaining chip you have in anything you do. Now, the problem with a lot of jobs is you get hired for this core thing, but then you've got all these unrelated skill things they want you to do. Like, you're in charge of making sure the printers work for the office. Whoopee, right? I've done that job. But now you also have to go through and make sure the printers are stocked with paper. Really, that's awesome, isn't it? So you sit there and say, my core skill I can get paid good money for, but these kind of unrelated ones, there may not be really good ROI on it. What you need to figure out is what are the kind of sister skills that you have a good job at that you can also add into your job. One of the tough things that happens when you get out of school and you take your first job is you kind of just do what you're told. Please just don't do just that. Look for more opportunities in the business. There are holes in every business. And the bigger the business, the bigger the holes. Now, in small businesses, there's stuff just lying around everywhere and people just running past it. In big businesses, there's just vacancies that people just don't know. What's in that room? I don't know. I don't go in there. And you just need to. You need to be bold. You need to take advantage of it and leverage your skills. Don't wait. Go through and find opportunities. All right. So back to the key man insurance idea. So how do you become key in an organization? You've seen some of these things. Like some people get key man insurance in the professional leagues. There'll be runners that take insurance out on their legs. All right, and if they get injured, then they go through and get paid. So this is one of the first steps I realized. I'd been working at this company right out of school, Sterling Wentworth, and where I ended up having great success. But I'd worked there about 18 months, and I went in for my first raise. And I was introduced to the term COLA. And I got a cost of living adjustment. Well, I was making $36,000 a year, and I got a COLA. And I thought, okay, I've built 2 products already. And those are already bringing in more than half the revenue the business already makes. And I just got a COLA? I got to figure out what's going on. And it was really interesting when I asked the president of the company, he goes, how can I go through and get compensated for the value I'm creating here? And he goes, well, you know, I'll know it when I see it. And I'm just like, oh, crap. I have an artist on my hands. How am I going to go through and get paid? And so you have to go through and evaluate. I came up with this model to go through and say, this is why I'm key to your business. So the first step is learn something of value that no one else in the business knows, and you're key by the act of scarcity. I sometimes refer to this as the Gollum stage, precious. And you have that one thing no one else knows. Now, it's great to get to this stage because a lot of people just don't, but get to the stage and know it. Now, the last thing you want to do is be that person that is the only one that knows it, and you get stuck with it. And then you get those phone calls on the weekends, and you always go on and on and on. The problem with this first step when you get there, you can become Gollum and hold on to it. Now I'm going to tell you the most important thing you need to do is let go of it. So to get to step 2 is to teach someone else that one thing. Now you're key because you're a trainer. And businesses value trainers more than they value someone who knows one thing. It's great to get to step 1. It's better to get to step 2. You're duplicating knowledge in a business. There is nothing more difficult in a business than growing its knowledge. Growing its talent, it's difficult. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time. So, step 3, think outside the box. Create something of value for the company's top line. And now you're key because you're an innovator. So Chase is in the back here. Chase, raise your hand. So Chase is involved with a new product we just launched and involved in helping design and build it. Chase went here, 2 years ago? And he's almost got his degree. Are you going to finish that up here soon? Yes. Okay, get it done soon. So he started and is working and rising in our ranks and doing things. He's also manning a table out there so you can grab some pens and paraphernalia and stuff and ask him some questions about our business. Thinking about things. Well, your job description probably doesn't say come up with new products to help make the business make money. Chase's didn't have that. But he came into me and says, I want to own this. I want to help this new product piece that you're working on. I can see it through. And he's helped make it a reality. And that's really cool because now the business can make more money, has a new revenue stream. Well, what's the next thing I'd ask Chase to do? Teach someone else to do the same thing. Teach others to innovate, and now you're key because you've become a leader for that business. So these are my 4 steps to keyness, and I encourage you to come up with your own models that help you go through and do it. If this one helps, great. All right, leadership and values. My job versus my company. When you're interviewing, here's my first tip to you. Listen to the way people talk about the business. Do they talk about my job, or do they talk about my company? It seems like a little nuance, but it matters a lot. People that have a job aren't going to be there very long. People that have a company that they believe in, that they really kind of get the tattoo in their hearts, that's the place you want to be. That's a place that has the kind of culture, an opportunity, an atmosphere of an opportunity for you to grow and become an employee entrepreneur. So you want to go through and look for those kind of nuances. Swimming with gold. You're on a boat. It's a mile from shore. You have 90 pounds of gold on the boat, and the boat's sinking. What are the chances that you can swim with 90 pounds of gold 1 mile to shore? It's probably going to kill you, isn't it? It's going to kill you one way or the other. You're like, oh, the gold's sinking. It's one of those tough scenarios. And that's one of the tough things about doing it yourself. You can't. You got to go through it. Well, the good news is on the boat with 5 other friends. Now each of you have to swim with 15 pounds on your back, 1 mile. Can you do it? It might be hard, but I bet you could. That's the whole concept I believe in about growing your business. Going through, sharing the wealth, and you end up with more. The wild thing is when you get to shore, you have like 120 pounds of gold somehow. It's like loaves and fishes with you. And you get more. The business grows, and it's awesome. Okay, so what to expect? You've learned some things, different techniques here. Hopefully ways to evaluate, figure out your fit, figure out how to be key, and how to go through and make that decision of, well, am I going to be a surf, or am I going to go through and be something more? What you want to do is get in and start thinking about what kind of risks you're going to take. And I have this little parable here I call the parable of the great sea captain. Has anyone heard of this parable before? Okay. Oh, Chase has heard it because he's heard me babble before. So there was once this great sea captain whose fame had spread throughout the land because every time he got into a naval conflict, he won. The odds were crazy. Now, there was kind of an interesting story about every single time they got into these conflicts, because any time an enemy vessel was spotted on the horizon, the great sea captain would turn to his first mate, he'd be my first mate, turn to his first mate and say, fetch me my red shirt. And the captain would put on his red shirt, go into battle, and they'd win. It's kind of cool. One day, an armada of ships were spotted on the horizon. And the first mate turns to the great sea captain, all excited and ready to hear it. And one thing the great sea captain had never told the first mate was why he asked for the red shirt. He'd asked for the red shirt because he didn't want his men to ever see him bleed in battle. Well, the great sea captain turned to the first mate and said, fetch me my brown pants. And that's such as it is when we become and make these kind of choices. Because sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it's scary. And you have to try to hide it, right? Go through and be bold and move forward. Violent execution is a concept that I really believe in. Too many times, people sit around and belabor ideas and try to get this perfect idea. It's way too slow. Don't go with a perfect idea. A good idea, executed violently, is what wins. Get out there, and you can have a chance to make that product better and better over time. But violent execution is something we really believe in. All right. So, in summary here, how do we do about changing our stars? Can we do it? Can we go through and do something different? Can you become an employee entrepreneur? Well, a little clip to wrap it up here.
You have been weighed.
You have been measured.
And you absolutely
have been found wanting.
Welcome to the new world. God save you, if it is right that he should do so.
So the old rules are really gone away. You have a chance now, with your skills you're gaining here and what you're doing, to go through and figure out what you want to do. Don't let the business world decide what you're going to become. Make sure you're at the helm. Make sure you're making decisions for yourself, thinking through these tough decisions. And there's some important ones to figure out in there. We've got about 10 minutes for questions. Love to open it up to you. Question?
Yeah, so, you know, we talked about being a serf and just kind of serving below people. I mean, is there any way to check those 3 boxes while still working for someone and not starting a business?
You know, the way you can do that is to go through and start with someone else who's in the early stages, or you can go through and say, I can come work for you for reduced pay, and give an opportunity to go through and do it, and be involved in a business early on. once a business gets established, they don't usually open up that way.
Yeah.
And so you usually end up with 2 checks instead.
Find a startup.
Find a startup. Yep. Find a startup where someone else has made a lot of the sacrifices. I found, in my mind, a startup that was 15 years old. It was an opportunity I could get in and really take advantage of. Next question? Yes?
How do you attract top talent on a bootstrap budget?
Yeah. Be a leader. You have to have people that believe in you. You won't attract talent with people who don't believe in you and believe in what you're talking about. So you need to go through and gather around people who think like you do, who compliment you, and that believe in you. And it's critical. There's no way I would have gotten this business off the ground if people didn't believe in who I was and what I was saying. Because our COO, I'd always sit there and say, hey, Brad, someday this company's going to be worth $25 million. And he'd sit there and go, John, I just want a paycheck next month. and Brad went like a year without pay, bless his soul, a long time. So yeah. Next question? Yeah.
You talked a lot about how employees need to understand the value they bring to the company. What have you found is the best way to recognize that value?
Well, the first thing is if you're improper in your fit with the business, it's really going to be hard for you to go through and show your value to that business. So you've got to understand the fit first for the business and the opportunity you can do there before you can then go through and show your value. So first make sure you got the fit right. Otherwise, you're going to be in there going saying, hey, I'm really valuable. Look how great I am. And you're like sitting on the phone, taking CSR calls, and you're like, well, okay, maybe it's not a good fit there. Because maybe that's a great place for you to start, but you wanted to go and build products. Well, figure that out. Chase and I were talking about this before. He's in our technical service manager group. And they go through and basically work inside of a browser to build our surveys, to deploy our solutions. And it's an entry-level position. But we have more vice presidents who've entered in as a TSM than any other department because they learned what the system would do, right? So understand that fit, then you can go through and create value. Good question. Next question? Yes, over here.
So once you've found the fit and you know your value and your employer knows your value, how do you figure out what you're worth? Like, my employer's been asking, well, what do you think? Like, what should I pay you? And
That's a great place to be in. Yeah. Well, you first need to know what market is, right? And then you need to go through and figure out where you stand on that scale. And that's an important piece. So, and understand kind of how unique you are to that business. And it's important to say, how do I differentiate? Again, back to those steps of keenness. It's important for you to really clearly understand how unique you are to that business. With a lot of small startups, sometimes, hey, I can go through and do 3 different jobs because I'm a good generalist. For a business that's more established, you're more like a sharpshooter. I'm really good sharpshooter. I'm not really good at herding sheep, but I'm good at sniping things instead. So figuring that out is a critical one. Good question. Thank you. Next one.
What's been a big failure in your life that has actually been a success?
Blue Step. 2.5 years. I worked my guts off there. I made so many sacrifices. I did so much work for that business, not knowing some things. So the knowledge I took away from that failure was huge for me. Because it allowed me to go through and say, I don't want to do Rumpelstiltskin again and sell off my firstborn to start a business. And it helped me create the opportunity I have today. It really did. So the Blue Step was my, quote, big failure because I had to close the doors. Man, that's brutal closing the doors on a business. I had 30 people that reported to me. We went through in the last 3 weeks as we were closing the business down. We did resumes every day, and 10 of them came with me, helped start up Inmoment. And there was no money, but they came because of the relationships we created. And for the first 3 months of Inmoment, we did resumes every Monday. And we went through and sent them out as a group because we weren't sure Inmoment was going to be successful. So we had resume Mondays. Kind of fun. Not as good as Taco Tuesdays, but. Next question? Yes?
How did you transition from entrepreneur startup to CEO and longevity of your company?
Yeah, that's an interesting transition. And you go through a bunch of transitions that you have to evaluate yourself saying, am I right fit for this next role? I just went through this, actually. I was just telling Tom about this, where I'd been running the business for 15 years. And I love to build and create things. It's what I'm really, really good at. Taking advantage of opportunity, but being an entrepreneur, right? And at some point in time, you have to sit there and say, well, how do I fit into this organization? And I evaluate, I took off hat after hat. I mean, I used to do all the QA. I was in charge of IT because there was nobody else. We had a small little group of people, and I had 9 hats on. If you come into my office, I have a hat rack with all these hats to kind of talk about wearing hats, right, and taking them off. And one of the toughest things to do is to take a hat off. So last year, I took off the CEO hat. And I said, well, do I have to run this business? I own it. I don't know if I necessarily need to run it. And that's kind of a step back and say, okay, I need to let someone else who's really good at this next phase. Because I'd realized 95% of my day job as CEO with a company of our size was running metrics. And it was slowly killing me inside. I was just like, what do I do all day? I ask for metrics, I report, and I say, do them better. And then I realized I wanted to build something. So I was real happy to be able to hire a CEO who runs that now for me. I focus as chief scientist building things and creating things. So knowing when to transition and change roles, it's a tough one. A lot of entrepreneurs really can't take that hat off. They end up being exited from their own business. I have a good friend of mine, a business you guys would all know. He wouldn't step down and end up having to be forced out. It's kind of a sad story, actually. But knowing when to take your hat off and move on for each of those roles, it's a tough growing point for anybody. Next question? Yes?
So I'm part of a startup right now that wears multiple hats, and then they just asked me to put on a new hat that I don't know how to do it. But nobody else does too, and so I took the reins and said, I'll figure it out. But how do you find investors?
How do you find investors? You know, there's a lot. I mean, it depends, right? In 2002, Utah had $5 million of outside money come in. $5 million. It's just like nothing, right? Last year it was over $1 billion. Just to kind of put it in perspective, Utah had over $1 billion of outside money. So could you find money today? Yeah. Is it the right kind of money? That's what you have to evaluate. What are you having to give up to be able to get that money? And are you willing to do that? A lot of this comes down to a viable product. If you have a viable product, going and raising money becomes so much easier because you're in the bargaining seat at that point in time. And if you have a viable product with some sales, you're really in the bargaining seat. And that's where you want to be.